simple rhythm. I tend to go off rhythm. You got to keep me on, okay? Om Jnana Timirandasya Dhyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Jnana Timirandasya Dhyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Gaur Premanandi. Did you like that melody? I created it a few weeks ago. Okay, so today I promised all of you that I would give you the way to enter the dance. I've made many promises in my life and I've never followed through on them. So if that happens today, there's nothing unique, nothing unusual for me. But I think I can come through. I think I can come through today. You'll have to let me know. The crown jewel of all Līlās, I explained the other day, is the phrase coming from Vishwanatha Chakravarti, Sarva-līlā cūḍā-maṇi. Sarva-līlā cūḍā-maṇi. And of course, I did repeat Kṛṣṇa's Kaviraj's statement, Līlās, the essence of all Līlās. So we're going to be moving along to the final and fifth chapter of the Rāsa Panchadhyayi, in which the great episode of the Rasa dance takes place. The sage Shuka spoke, thus having heard the enchanting words of their beloved Lord. The gopis forgot the agony caused by separation from him. Their desires were fulfilled simply by touching his limbs. Then Govinda commenced with the play of the Rasa dance with his devoted ones. Those jewel-like maidens joined together by pure love, linked their arms with one another. And this is really the launching in this verse right here. I only could put part of it because in the next slide we'll have the rest, but because it's sort of a 1.5 verse length. The festival of the Rasa dance began blossoming forth with the perfect turning of a circular formation of gopis who were beautifully adorned. Now the Sanskrit in this is just exquisite. Rasotsava sampravritta gopi mandala manditaha. Rasotsava. Rasa, utsava. Utsava is often translated as festival, but it means also a blossoming. So the Rasa dance being a circular Govinda, circular formation, it's like a flower opening up. So the Rasa dance coming together with the Vrajagopikas, it's like a great lotus flower just blossoming. So that's sort of the feeling when you get this. The festival of the Rasa dance began blossoming forth. Rasotsava sampravritta. Sampravritta means the perfect turning. Actually, I think I have a newer translation. The perfect turning forth of a circular sampravritta. Perfect, sampra, forth, vritta, turning. Sampravritta, the perfect turning forth of a circular formation of gopis who are beautifully adorned. Don't mind if I correct the translation, because I was the one who came up with the translation. So I can correct my own translation. Okay, so don't tell me not to correct the text. Okay, thank you. I could feel some of you just, I think it was Anantashesha, you were thinking, you know what? I could feel it, you know? Okay, yeah. Okay. Oh, I want to go back to this. The perfect turning forth, sampravritta. You know, in the beginning of the Yoga Sutra, the famous text, second text, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. It's, yoga is a transformation of the heart, chitta. When it is turning in its conditioned state, and those conditionings are uprooted, and when the pure turnings occur, when those pure turnings are rooted and blossom forth. So I'm giving too rough a translation of this, but the idea here is yoga chitta vritti, the turnings within the heart. So my conclusion, if I can share this with all of you, as my dear friends here, is that the conclusion of the Yoga Sutra is that the turning, the ultimate turning within one's heart is surrounding one's heart with the Ras Mandala. We'll see this. When the Supreme Lord of Yoga, Kṛṣṇa himself, entered among them between each pair. And when he, with his arms, grasped the necks of all those young women, each thought she alone was at his side. Now, symbolically, this is very significant, as you'll see when I come to the conclusion. Then hundreds of celestial chariots crowded the sky, carrying the captivated denizens of the heavens along with their wives, their souls anxious to behold that scene. Kettle drums resounded while showers of blossoms fell to the ground. The leading Gandharvas and their wives sang about his perfect glory. So what's happening here is that Kṛṣṇa was surrounded by the Vrajagopikas who linked arms. And then Kṛṣṇa duplicated himself multiple times, or as Prabhupada likes to say, expanded himself, okay? But duplicated himself multiple times to be manifest between each pair of gopis. So this is one vision of the Ras Mandala. So you'll see two gopis, a Kṛṣṇa, two gopis, and a Kṛṣṇa. And that was my first assigned Ras Mandala painting that I did, which we'll, I think, visit. But you'll see at the end of the Rasa Panchadhyayi, the end of this episode, we have a Kṛṣṇa per each gopi dancing. And the acharyas explain that, look, there's sometimes two gopis for each Kṛṣṇa, sometimes there are two Kṛṣnas for each gopi, there's sometimes one Kṛṣna for one gopi, and he said all manner of counting is going on. Okay, so this gets to the number thing, the whole numerical thing. Don't try to place a conceivable number on Krishna's Līlās. It does not work, okay? So, this is getting ready. The kettle drums are resounding. And this is, of course, advantageous that, the Vrajagopikas are there in the middle of the night with Kṛṣṇa. There are no drums or any musical accompaniment except the buzzing of bees. That was kind of going on, kind of like a tambura sort of drone. But they didn't need to supply any instruments because they were up in the heavens. Kettle drums were sounding, and the Gandharvas were, they have the best voices in the universe, except for yours. Yeah. And here, more percussion occurred when the bracelets, ankle bells, and bells decorating the waists of those young women, each with her own beloved, created a tumultuous sound in the circle of the Rasa dance. So there were plenty of instruments. This is the penultimate verse before the climactic verse of the whole 173 verses, 5 chapters. There, glowing brilliantly among them, was the beloved Lord, son of Devaki. In a setting of golden ornaments, he appeared like a magnificent emerald. Ladies and gentlemen, what color is an emerald? What color is Kṛṣṇa? Well, all I'm hearing is a cacophony of... Okay, that's settled that. Yes, dark, or usually he's compared to a sapphire, a cūḍā-maṇi, right? Which is also shyam, dark, because sapphires can be extremely dark. So what's going on here? The text is saying he appeared like an emerald, and we know that Krishna's shyam, or dark emerald, sapphire. So in the commentary, Sridhar, the original commentator and most respected commentator of the Bhagavad Purana, is very bold and says, Krishna is not green, he's blue. And he just settles that. He refuses to accept that Krishna is the color of a magnificent emerald. Mahamarakataha is the term. Mahamarakataha. So right off the bat, we've got a fight. Okay? The text says green. Sridhar says blue. Uh-oh. Okay. But who always comes along and solves the mystery? Vishwanatha. That's it. Vishwanatha Chakravarti. He does. He has a way of putting together the disparate, sometimes apparently contradictory pieces and has a kind of a holistic understanding. Bless you. Govinda. So what Vishwanatha Chakravarti explains is that, yes, Sridhar Swami is correct. Krishna is blue, but he appears, as the text says, he appears to be like a great emerald in such close proximity to the golden complected Vrajagopikas. And when you combine the primary colors of blue and yellow, you get the secondary color. Yes. I hope you're applauding Vishwanatha Chakravarti, because I did not come up with that. He came up with that, and it's beautiful. And what's so powerful about this is that, notice, it's Krishna who is transformed, not the Vrajagopikas. Their love is so powerful that it transforms Krishna. That's my mother trying to get a hold of me. Don't worry about it. She tries to get a hold of me all the time. I never answer. She's passed away 10 years ago. But I swear she knows how to call people's cell phones when I'm giving lectures. You don't believe me, it always happens, but I never answer. Okay, so I love you, Mom. Just please, you could, after class, please. Never does it. Okay, anyway, so we read yesterday that Krishna said, I am unable to reciprocate your love. Remember that? Right at the end of the 4th chapter. I am unable to reciprocate your love. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswamin in the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Krishna breaks his promise. In chapter 4, verse 11, Ye yatamam prapadyante tangstatava bhajamyam. I always reciprocate the love of anyone who comes to me, submits themselves to me. And Krishnadas Kaviraj points out that here, Krishna breaks his promise. So he doesn't fulfill that promise when it comes to the gopis. He cannot do. And here you can see what's being demonstrated is that their love is so powerful that it gives Krishna this emerald, beautiful, beautiful emerald complexion. So that's what's happening here. And finally, the ultimate climactic verse of the whole text, which, by the way, goes on for 2 slides because it's the longest metered verse in the whole text, as I was explaining to someone earlier today. It's the only meter of 17 syllables per quarter verse in the whole text. 17 is a lot of syllables. And it's the Atyeshti meter, and it's the only one. So clearly, the poet is telling us that this is the ultimate point of the whole Līlā. With their feet stepping to the dance, with gestures of their hands, loving smiles, and sporting eyebrows, with waists bending and rhythmic movements, of garments covering their breasts, with earrings swinging on their cheeks, the spiritual wives of Kṛṣṇa, with moistened faces and braids and belts tied tightly, saying his praises. And I love this last quarter verse. They appeared like lustrous flashes of radiant lightning engulfed by a ring of dark clouds. Let's read that together. They appeared like lustrous flashes of radiant lightning engulfed by a ring of dark clouds. So this is the image. And the next verse is so sweet, I quote it as the dedication of my forthcoming book. The second part is what I quote. While dancing, they sang out loud, and the throats of those so delighted by love became reddened. And this is the part that I quote in the very front of the book as a dedication. They were overjoyed by the touch of Kṛṣṇa, and the whole universe became filled with their song. Okay, skipping ahead a little bit. The beauty of their faces was enhanced by droplets of perspiration decorating their cheeks, and by lotus flowers in their hair and behind their ears, with music resounding from their bracelets and ankle bells and garlands falling from their hair. The gopis danced with their beloved Lord. Bees became a chorus of singers in that assembly of the Rasa dance. Now, when it came to depicting the Rasa dance, the Rasa Mandala, circular dance, the great circular dance, the wondrous circular dance of the Rasa, there are literally hundreds of paintings of this. And I did not find myself very satisfied with them, because the artists always inserted all kinds of things, and I'll tell you what they are. For example, gopi musicians playing mridanga. There's no gopi musicians playing mridanga. Cows are sort of like walking around. It's the middle of the night. Cows don't walk around in the middle of the night. If you've ever seen a cow walking around in the middle of the night, you need help. Okay? And if you can talk to me after class and I can make some suggestions. My father was a psychiatrist. Other things come in. Sometimes the gopis are found playing musical instruments, of stringed instruments. There's just none of that there. And I wanted now some of our wonderful artists, early artists in ISKCON, Radharani, she painted, I believe, the first Sarva-līlā, Rasa Mandala painting. And I'm sure Prabhupada liked it because it was up in his room and he was there with it, and he must have appreciated it, I'm inferring. Hers is a little wild. And they do get a little wild. There are places that when you read, I'm not giving you all of the verses here, but there are verses where the gopis try a certain kind of flair, a dance, and Kṛṣṇa goes, sadhu, sadhu, perfect, and then sometimes they do like a regular sort of rhythmic dance, and sometimes another one will go and do something spontaneous. So it moves between sort of spontaneous movements and sort of expected movements. So I consulted with a musician or a musicologist of India, and there are these different types of dance that one can expect. So it does get a little wild, and Radharani's painting of Kṛṣṇa and the gopis is very wild. They're going like this, go like this. And I mean, it looks like practically like a Vedic hootenanny, you know? I mean, it's just a little too wild for my taste and in terms of my reading of the Rāsa-līlā. And I wanted to depict the Rasa Mandala as being completely saturated with prema. Completely saturated. So that was my goal, and to make it completely textually grounded and not putting anything extra in there, except one major thing, which I've already mentioned, which we'll get to. Observing the play of Kṛṣṇa, celestial ladies moving in the sky became enchanted, and passion arose in them. Even the moon, with its constellations, became amazed. And then the final verse of the scene of the Rasa dance is this one. Having multiplied himself in as many forms as there were cowherd women. So you see, now it's a one-to-one, right? It's not just one between each pair. But remember, each pair of gopis, they each thought that Kṛṣṇa was exclusively with them. So in a way, it is still one-to-one, but yet it's two-to-one. So, he, the beloved Lord, even though all pleasure exists within himself, delighted in loving them within this divine play. So, what I'd like to suggest, before we go on to this concept that I'm evolving these days, I'm writing about this now, the outward gaze of divinity. The Rasa Mandala, I conclude in my book that I originally published. I know a lot of you heard me yesterday, and from my lecture, I think some of you really didn't believe I actually wrote a book. But I did, and here's the proof. It's right here, okay? And it's 450 pages. It was done in 2005 and printed by Princeton. And the front of it is a detail of Radha and Kṛṣṇa at the center of the Rasa Mandala for the sake of the book cover, having a larger image. But inside, I give in the frontispiece, there is a poorly replicated black and white version of the whole painting, which I can't find. Oh, here it is. But, you can't really, to all of you, it's going to look like a big gray blob, and it's pretty much that. But anyway, they didn't do a very good job with the printing on that particular thing. Anyway, in the conclusion of my book, I suggest that the Rasa Mandala is a great symbol of divine love that the world currently needs. First of all, note how the Vrajagopikas linked their arms together to initiate the Rasa Mandala. That symbolizes human inclusivity. Unity within humanity, linking arms. Only then does divinity exclusively come to us. But it seems that most religion has it in reverse. Divinities come to me exclusively, and you, my friend, are going to hell. I had, for a while, my wife and I had a second house in Alachua on 17 acres and so on. We thought of it as a writing retreat, but we're such stick in the muds, we never went down there. So but one time when we were down there, it was Sunday morning, and 8 o'clock in the morning, someone's knocking on the door. I'm saying, who would that be? No one knows I'm here. And my wife is looking a little sheepish. She said, well, I thought you'd like to meet this very nice older couple. A very nice older couple? That's an oxymoron. I said, well, what do you mean a very nice older? I said, oh, no. Don't tell me. You spoke to the Jehovah's Witnesses? She said, well, yeah, I mean, I said, okay. And you told them to come back to meet me because I'm a scholar of religion, right? She said, well, sort of along those lines. I said, okay. Invite them in. So they came in, sweetest, most darling little older couple, came in, they sat, and this is important that you understand the seating arrangements. There were two perpendicular seats in which they sat, and my wife and I were sitting on the couch. She was sitting to my left, and I was talking to them. So they asked me a little bit about what I do and so on. But I asked them, so what religious traditions were each of you prior to your becoming Jehovah's Witnesses? And one said Catholic, another one said Protestant. I said, okay. And I said, so tell me, what is it that you most love about your tradition? And I was startled with their response, which came to me in unison. They both said it at the same time, knowing the truth. I said, that's what you love most about your tradition? Knowing the truth. They said, yes. Now, remember, my wife and I are on the couch. I don't know how many of you understand marriage language, but I got a kick under the couch, which in her language is be nice. Because my wife knows when I get these challenges, like Deborah the other day, I go in for the kill. Okay? So, of course, I smile at her like, you know I'm not. And so I say, so this is what you value the most, knowing the truth. They said, yes. I said, is Jesus figuring in there somewhere? I mean, do you love him? I mean, is there any love here? And I said, and they were both talking a little bit, and I said, look, I know why you're both here. Both of you are here to save both of us from your hell. I get 2 kicks under the couch because it's getting intense. Okay? And they said, yes, we are here to save you from hell. I said, do you have any idea how many people have sat in these chairs from different religious traditions, saving us from their hells? Do you know how many hells I'm going to? I said, this is not what the world needs. You're assuming an exclusivistic knowledge and understanding and connection with divinity, but you have not yet connected with the rest of humanity. This is what the Rāsa Mandala says. Until we've connected with each other's hearts as humans, divinity will never show up. And we can see this in the religious traditions of the world. Way too isolated, unwilling to engage in dialogue, and so willing to send everyone else to hell. Even individual Christian denominations send their brothers and sisters in other Christian denominations to hell, what to speak of those outside of Christianity. This is not what the world needs. The world needs dialogue and sharing, and that's the essence of bhakti. Bhakti, the word bhakti comes from the verb root bhaj, which means to share. We are all about sharing. I know Prabhupada uses the word preaching a lot. He adopted that word from, the Christian tradition. And it's easily recognizable by Westerners, so we recognized it. He even uses sometimes the phrase kingdom of God, right? Sometimes, not often. But we don't think of Vraj as the kingdom of God. So Prabhupada was speaking to us primarily as Christians so we could understand. But actually, we don't preach. We share. We share. Maybe I'm a little preachy, but Swami is someone, he shares, right? So you got plenty of sharing earlier. I'm going to preach now, whether you like it or not. And I had the organizers lock the front door, so you can't get out. But that's kind of what they were doing. The Jehovah's Witnesses were there, kind of trapping us in our own home, trying to convince us that they were the answer to our life's problems. And I was telling them that they are my life's problem. So my wife was very nervous throughout this whole thing because she's a much gentler, she's a decent human being, and I'm not. And but I thanked them for coming, and I said that really, I hope they can open up themselves to genuine dialogue and sharing between traditions. When you go around to these houses, find out what people love. As the great Catholic philosopher Augustine said, "What do I love when I love my God?" Ask that question. What do you love so much about your tradition? When Prabhupada says, if you say you're a Muslim, then be a Muslim. Then go deep into that. He never said, forget about your Islamic tradition. Just come over to us. He never said that. Once I was at a Sunday feast in Boston many years ago, and there were some Harvard students coming over, and I was there, they were there, but they were in Govinda. Did you hear that sneeze? Did you feel the floor shake? It was over here. It's quite tumultuous. Anyway, he deserves the blessings of Govinda. He already got one blessing, that's enough. So they sat down, and they were obviously very talented in medicine. They were all in the medical, part of Harvard, and I said, are you enjoying the feast? And he needs a doctor. And they said, yes, very much. And I said, do you enjoy the kirtan, the music? And they said, oh, yes. I said, so what are your backgrounds? And, we got through the Harvard thing, you're doing this in medicine, fine. We got rid of all that. But what are your personal backgrounds and so on? Well, they were all Muslim. I said, marvelous. Do you practice? I mean, do you read daily the Quran? Do you pray 5 times a day? If I may ask, And one of them was very devout. One of them said, yes, I do. I said, that's wonderful. And then we shared ideas about divinity and so on. There were some onlooking or listening devotees around. And after they left, they came up to me and complained to me about, me. They said, why didn't you, make them devotees? I said, they already are devotees. This is not our process. Our process is, first of all, to dialogue, understand. And Prabhupada always emphasized sincerity. In the Latin, that means sine cere, which means without wax. Back in the Roman days, I think they mixed things with wax to sort of cheat. It's like in the asafoetida, mix it with a bunch of sand. Yeah. I actually think they do that anyway. So the idea is sharing is what we're all about. The Ras Mandala is a great symbol of sharing. All the Vrajagopikas were different. They were dressed differently. They looked different. They were linking arms, and only then did Kṛṣṇa come to each of them exclusively. So the world has it backwards. They're claiming exclusivity before they've even embarked on a attempt for inclusivity. So I suggest at the end of this book that this is a great symbol of religious pluralism. Everyone fits in this except those who are unwilling to link arms. So that is one of the conclusions I came to. I come to another conclusion, which is the key to how to enter the Rāsa dance. Okay, so I have to deliver. Where's my thing? Here it is. Okay. The outward gaze of divinity. The Sarva-līlā, the whole Līlā, begins with an outward gaze of divinity. And we talked a little bit about this, why Kṛṣṇa's playing the flute, even why Kṛṣṇa's playing the flute when he's with Radha. We went through that. Kṛṣṇa is calling all of us to their hearts. Otherwise, Kṛṣṇa would not be holding, Damodar would not be holding the flute, he would be gazing inwardly to Radha. But here they are both gazing outwardly and calling us to their divine love. So this is the outward gaze, what I call the outward gaze of divinity. Then there's the inward gaze of divinity. And that's the Rasa mandala. And by the way, this is the new painting that I commissioned and helped design, at least the basic composition that Kim Waters put together. But this is the inward gaze. It's very much, a circle is very enclosed. It's enclosing and it's framing Radha and Kṛṣṇa. Now this is my confession, which I've partly already made. It is inconceivable to paint the Rasa mandala without Radha in the middle with Kṛṣṇa. I mentioned that yesterday. The Chaitanya school cannot see Kṛṣṇa without Radha. Radha is never without Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa is never without Radha. It's impossible. And although the Bhagavata doesn't mention it, it's mentioned in the esoteric literature, and certainly the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that each of the Vrajagopikas are but embodiments of each of Radha's emotions, and Kṛṣṇa is attending each one of them. You see, those of you in here who are husbands, how good are you at attending each one of your wife's emotions? That's a rhetorical question. I don't want to hear from any of you. Okay? So, this is why Kṛṣṇa is the divine. He's the absolute, because he can do that with Radha, who is the supreme feminine divinity. So, the forever dance of divine love, the wondrous circle of the Rasa mandala. And here's the complete painting. I realize it's a little small here for you to see, but notice the difference in this painting compared to other paintings, with the wild dancing and so on. This is a painting meant to exhibit the prema that was exhibited or that was experienced between each of the gopikas and Kṛṣṇa. Of course, there's the full moon. There are the denizens of the heavenly planets who are, when you get a close look, you can see the showering flowers and so on in the sky. But there's nothing extra here, nothing extra. And if you look really closely down here, there's a chorus of bees. Okay? So nothing subtracted, nothing added, except, well, I don't even consider that I added Radha because she's already there. She has to be. Okay. Here's the $1 million question. How do we enter the dance? Okay, we should take a break now. And, okay, I guess I'm not going to make it out of here without without delivering, okay? So we enter the dance, ladies and gentlemen, by, first of all, responding to Krishna's love call. After all, that is an invitation to the dance. Why is he calling us? He's calling us to his realm of divine love, his Vraja, his region of Vraja, his divine Vraja region. So the first thing we need to do is to respond to the love call. And that's what Krishna Bhakti is all about. That's why we're all here. Because we all are, in our own ways, greater ways, lesser ways, whatever is appropriate for our journey and our process of purification, we are responding to that love call. The love call, though, invites us to the dance. It's by sounding the Mahamantra. That is your key. That's your entry card. That's your code to get into the Rasa dance. But that means we have to evolve our chanting in such a way as to know that it has that power. Let's talk about that. Notice how I superimposed the Mahamantra. Maybe many of you can't read it, but it's the whole Mahamantra in a circular fashion. And the gates of Vraja open when... But if you don't chant well, the doors close. Okay, well, at first I was being filled with pride that I timed this beautifully, and then Kṛṣṇa came along and said, we're going to close the doors on you. I told Swamiji the story the other day. I'll just quickly repeat it. When my wife and I were in Vrindavan recently in December, we were flown over there I was to give lectures on leadership, lessons of leadership on the Bhagavad Gita to a very wealthy group of Indian men and women, own businesses and so on. So anyway, so we then, that was in Jaipur, we went to Vrindavan afterwards and we went on various pilgrimages. We went to Govardhan. Loved it, but to Govardhan, and I'll come back to Govardhan in a minute in relation to this story. So I took my wife to Radha Damodar, and the Pujari recognized me from a few years ago when I actually stayed at Radha Damodar and for several days, and he gave me, he was so happy to see me, he gave me a garland, he gave me sweets and loading us up and so on. It was great. Then when we left, there's a shoe room where there's someone who hands you your shoes. Your shoes are put in a bag, actually, and you give the receipt, and you get your shoes because it's very busy. So my wife went first, she went out, and then I got my shoes, and as soon as I step out, the moment I step out, a monkey higher than this, reaching up to my chin, it was a big, big monkey, came right up to me, and I swear it was this close. It's staring at me, I'm staring at it, its luminescent green eyes were glowing, and it was an eternal moment. I've been to Vrindavan 16 times. I lived in Vrindavan for 6 months back in 1982. I never had this kind of encounter. So the monkey is looking at me. I'm looking at it this close. I didn't have time to be scared because this is so startling. Like, here you are in my face. Even humans don't get in my face that close, right? Okay? And then the monkey defiantly plucked a flower from my garland, put it in his mouth. I'm watching his jaw kind of go side to side. I'm used to seeing jaws go up and down. And from this jaw that was going from side to side, some of the petals of the flower he imbibed defiantly were kind of like beginning to come out. And I was thinking, you know, if my kid did this, I would say something, but I'm not going to. The Brijbashi behind me said, Prabhu, you have to give him the garland. I said, yeah. And I gave him the garland, and he ran off. And I was saved. Okay, no, that's enough. That's enough. A little applause is fine. And then we went to my old friend's house, Srivatsa Goswami, of Radharaman Mandir. Radharaman, Jai Singera. I met him at my first year at graduate school. He was a visiting scholar at Harvard. We just happened to meet in 1977, the year that Prabhupada departed. And he was there accompanying me at the temple. We had a huge thing for a lot of the Harvard scholars came. Diana Eck, Harvey Cox, Srivatsa was there. And there were a few other scholars there. It was amazing. It was a little overwhelming for me because I could hardly handle Prabhupada's departure. Then having Harvard come over to the temple, it was kind of like, what? But whatever. But it was really wonderful. They saw the documentary that was, remember that was, right. Srivatsa, we went over to Srivatsa's beautiful compound. It's right on the Yamuna. And I told Srivatsa the story about the monkey. And he started laughing after he heard the story. My wife is sitting there. He said, Garuda Das, I know why Kṛṣṇa sent that monkey to you. You do? He said, oh, yes. He said with a smile. He said, because you're becoming so accomplished as a scholar, you're being filled with too much pride. So he sent a monkey to humble you. I said, well, thanks for that. That's very helpful. What are friends for? So, Vrindavan, everything that happens in Vrindavan happens for a very good reason. And Srivatsa thought he could translate it for me, and probably he was right. But it was quite remarkable. I have never seen the eyes of a monkey, what to speak of this close. And it was an extraordinary experience, really, something. I'm still trying to digest it all, understand it. The Maha Mantra is a unique mantra. There is no mantra like it. Let me tell you why. First of all, it's known as the Maha Mantra. I don't think there are many mantras known as the Maha Mantra. In fact, I'm not sure there are any others. There might be one or two that some people apply it to, but really, the well-known Maha Mantra is the one we know. It's such a powerful mantra that it can be chanted anytime, anywhere, for any reason. And not all mantras can do that. It's also the only mantra that has names of divinity without any other words in it. And they're all in the vocative case. Vocative case means calling out, right? In Sanskrit, there are 8 cases: nominative, accusative, instrumental, blah, 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 and vocative. And vocative means it's an inflected ending. So when you say Kṛṣṇa or Kṛṣṇah, that's the nominative case, that's the subject. But if you just simply say Kṛṣṇa, that means you're calling out to Kṛṣṇa. Same thing with Hare. Of course, there's a convenient ambiguity there in the inflection. It can either be Hari in the vocative or Hara. Okay? So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the mood of Radha, was chanting Hare, he was saying Hari. But when we chant it, we say Hara. It's the divine feminine. So it's the only mantra that has a series of names, and it's the only mantra that repeats them in a kind of pattern, a circuitous pattern. And it's the only mantra that has both feminine and masculine divine names in this kind of circuitous pattern. So it's circular. And there is the circle. The Maha Mantra is but the sonic replication of the Rasa Mandala, is the conclusion in my book. Where did I get that? I have no idea. Prabhupada practically says everything just short of that. Kṛṣṇa dancing on your tongue, right? Talks about that. Well, come on. You think Krishna's alone dancing on your tongue? Don't give me that. Don't even try that. Krishna is not alone. He's always with his beloveds. Always with his beloveds. The divine realm, the Vraja realm, is saturated with rasa. The whole thing is rasa, saturated. And the Maha Mantra, when we chant the Maha Mantra, whether we know it or not, we're reenacting the Rasa Mandala. It's a dance. Have you noticed? Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Now wait a second. We've got Hare consistently throughout the mantra, but what happened to Kṛṣṇa? Rama? Now, first of all, there are many levels of being able to relate to the Maha Mantra. That's another reason why it's the Maha Mantra. It's so universal and yet so intimately personal to each one of us. If we are beginners at Krishna Bhakti, these are just sounds. We barely even know that they're names. And we're just to concentrate on the sounds. And you know what? It's self-perfection. Fine. Then we learn about these names and who they are, what they are. We learn that it's a kind of calling out. Prabhupada gives the example of a little child crying out for its mother. These are in the vocative case. I was teaching a Gurukula class one day in Lachud at the Bhaktivedanta Academy. And I like kids. To me, they're like animals. I love animals. Okay? In fact, when I was coming here this morning, the gate was closed. As you drive in, the gate was closed. I said, what is going on? Did they tell someone to close the gates because they knew I was coming? I had this whole, kind of identity crisis right there in my car on the road in front of the gate. Suddenly, I see that the cows are being taken out. I go, oh my goodness, this is for me. Everything's for me, right? Egocentric, right? Ahankar, you learned about me the other day. But the cows were beautiful. Oh my goodness, all these brown Swiss cows, extraordinary. I'm going to frolic around with them later. You want to come with me, Swamiji? Yeah, okay, whatever. So, now why was I telling you this? So in front of these children, I said to them, what is Radha and Kṛṣṇa doing when they're, together? They're playing the flute. Well, I got them to actually notice that they're calling out to us. Then I asked them, well, when we chant the Maha Mantra, what are we doing? And they understood, we're calling out to them. Well, is this a bad connection? Sometimes you can't get through on your phone. Like I noticed around here, I can never call anyone. So I said to these children, so if you're calling out to them, And what if Kṛṣṇa finally answers the phone? What are you going to say to Kṛṣṇa? You know, and you can imagine the kids said all kinds of things. That's really interesting. And I was right down on the floor with them. I mean, Vishwambar wanted to put me up on a chair with the girl. I said, no. I'm one of the kids. Just put me down right here on the floor with them. And we're going to talk about this. The idea is coming together. Now, here's one of the things that I'd like to bring out before we get back to the Maha Mantra. The outward gaze of divinity and the inward gaze of divinity. Have you ever been to a cathedral? Right. You know, like the Notre Dame or National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., they're, right? What kind of gaze does God have there? Anyone? When you go, what do you feel? Yeah? So what kind of gaze is that? The majestic. What's the gaze? Outward? Well, outward could be way up there. It's downward. It's a downward gaze. Even if you're as close to the cross, the crucifixion, depictions of the crucifixion, Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, you know, they're looking up at Jesus. It's always a downward gaze. It's always a downward gaze. This is what distinguishes our tradition from others. The downward gaze of divinity. We don't like that. We want the outward gaze and the inward gaze of divinity. This is where we dwell. Not to say that that's a bad rasa. No, that's a completely valid relationship. But when you walk into a cathedral, it's like, whoa, right? You're just, your attention is drawn up into the building, isn't it? When I'm introducing my university students to religion, to the sacred, to the holy, you know, a lot of them come in, they go like, religion, holy. So what is that, you know? So I scare them right at the beginning of my course. I said, if any of you have walked into the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., and if any of you have also walked into the big grocery store down the street, and if you cannot feel the difference, get out of my classroom. Right now. They're all kind of like, oh, he's pretty serious. Come on, you can feel the difference. When you walk into a holy place, you can feel the difference. Well, here, I don't see anyone looking down at me. Well, they're blocked right now, but they're looking out at us. And it's the outward gaze, and they have an inward gaze. And we dwell on both. We appreciate both. Now, it just so happens that in the Maha Mantra, these three names speak about divinity. Why Kṛṣṇa and why Rāma? Kṛṣṇa means the divinity, refers to the divinity that attracts us, as in Madan Mohana, attracts us. Even the verb root, krish, means to draw. To draw. Kṛṣṇa is drawing us with his irresistible beauty, his flute call. And Rāma means pleasure. It's the inward gaze of divinity. So I am suggesting that Kṛṣṇa, when we chant Kṛṣṇa, that is the outward gaze of divinity. And then when we get to Rāma in the mantra, that's the inward. So we're constantly being drawn to Kṛṣṇa and then we're embraced by Kṛṣṇa. Drawn by Kṛṣṇa, embraced by Kṛṣṇa. And this is what's going on in the Maha Mantra. Kṛṣṇa, the supreme divinity who called our souls to dance, Rama, the supreme divinity who embraces us in our dancing. So the Maha Mantra is the key to the dance. It is the dance, and it's the key to getting into the dance at the same time. And these are just certain ways to understand and appreciate the Maha Mantra. There's so many ways. It's a universal mantra, but it's incredibly intimate. I'm just sharing with you the way I personally perceive the mantra. And maybe it resonates with you. The highest form of yoga, according to Patanjali, is samapatti, which means the close coming together of meditator with the divine beloved. This is extraordinary. The Patanjali speaks of this. Samapatti. Poor translators, poor interpreters of the Yoga Sutra think that samapatti is synonymous with samadhi. Wrong. Samadhi is a state of, what is it? How do I translate it? Perfect, or fully giving oneself over. Full. What is the three words that I use? What is it? I can't remember. So it's full ecstatic absorption. Samadhi. It's giving oneself completely over to the beloved object of meditation. Whereas samapatti is the close coming together of the two. That not only do we give ourselves over to divinity, but divinity gives himself over to us. I believe that's called Rāsa. Ishta Devata. It is one's most beloved form of divinity with whom one comes together in perfect union. Patanjali speaks of this. All of these yogis are trying to realize what we have. And Prabhupada said that. You walk into the temple room, your Paramatma realized. Remember? He spoke of this. I mean, it's amazing. There I was practicing yoga very seriously for 5 years before I found Prabhupada when I was 19. And, oh gosh, I revealed something to Swamiji yesterday that I shouldn't have. But since I did, I owe it to the rest of you. I'm a high school dropout. You can leave. If you feel ripped off, just go ahead. I'm every parent's nightmare. I said to my parents when I was 15, I said, I'd like to drop out of high school. These are highly educated people, both my parents. They said, well, what will you do all day? I said, I will read yoga philosophy and meditate. They said, that's what you're going to do all day? I said, yes. It's pretty much what I do now. They always believed in me. They always had a sense that I knew what I was doing, even though they didn't. But they sort of trusted me and said, okay, but what about college? I said, college? If it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. So they let me drop out at age 15 because my birthday's in the summer, so I dropped out. And then 16 came along, and then I decided I really need to learn Sanskrit. I need to understand this philosophy deeply. I read 13 different translations of the Gita before Prabhupada's came out in 72. The summer of 72 is when I really joined the ashram. It's the exact time when Prabhupada's Macmillan Gita came out. August 14th, right around that time. And so I said, I got to go to college and learn this stuff. And my mother said, well, you don't have a high school diploma. I said, well, I'm loosely associated with this hippie school. I could go and see if they give them out, It's hippie. They don't really care for rules. So I went over to see Joel. I even remember his name, Joel. I said, Joel, I'm trying to get into college. Do you have high school diploma? Can you graduate me or something? He said, sure. And he took a spiral. He said, he took a spiral. I'm not exaggerating. There are many people who don't believe this story, but this is absolutely true. He took a spiral notebook, turned it on its side, landscape direction, turned it to a page, with the little ugly spirals, and he said, draw it. I said, you're kidding, right? He said, no, I'll sign it. I mean, we are actually incorporated. Okay. So what is the title? He gave me the title. This to certify that Graham M. Schweig is a graduate of this school. And he said, you put my name down here, Joel Danker is his name. And he said, but then we need a witness. I said, who's that going to be? And he said, Fred. And upstairs apparently was a Fred. And Fred did not answer. And he said, Fred. He called more loudly. I don't want to imitate how loudly it got, but 3 times. And finally I heard, He said, what's wrong with Fred? He said, he smoked a little too much last night. I said, that's who you're going to have sign my diploma. At the time, I didn't consider it a blessing, but perhaps, who knows who Fred is? Right? Linking arms, right? I mean, okay, whatever. So Fred came stumbling down the stairs and he signed the damn thing. And believe it or not, that is what I sent to Johns Hopkins. Because they said, look, we've got your SATs, we got, your statement. You're 16, you are a little young to be entering college. Usually it's a year later, but that's fine. We just need a high school diploma. I wrote back saying, I don't have one. Please process without. I mean, I had some gumption here to tell them what to do, but I said, please, process. They said, we can't. This is Johns Hopkins. I said, I know who you are. They said, look, we don't really take the GED. Now, back then in those days, no one knew what a GED was. I didn't know what a GED was. So I found out what it was, and I grew up in Washington, D.C. I called up, they said, well, you can't take the GED until you're 19 and a half. I said, I'm not going to wait 3.5 years to take the GED. I want to go now. So I wrote them back saying, I can't, they won't let me take the GED. I'd be perfectly happy to take it. They said, look, Mr. Schweig, we don't really care what you do. Just get a high school diploma, whatever. So I took that seriously, went to Joel. Well, usually, you get acceptance letters in March. You apply in the fall, you get the acceptance in March. Well, March went by, we hear nothing. April went by and heard nothing. It's March, April, May. May went by and we heard nothing. We just kind of dropped it. In the middle of June, I get a long letter, envelope. I open it up, it says, congratulations, you've been admitted to Johns Hopkins. Suddenly I feel as though I'm on drugs. And I never took drugs. So I asked my mother to read it because I know she doesn't take drugs. So I had her read it and she looked at me and she said, you want to go? I said, yeah. She said, pack your bags. We're going to go. Because Baltimore is just, 45 minutes from DC. So that's how I got into college and I never got out. I've been there ever since. But I do tell my university students that I don't have a high school diploma, and they all look at me like, And someone invariably says, Dr. Schweig, does Harvard know about this? I go, so I have fun with this. But I was so serious about reading the Bhagavad Gita that I felt I had to learn Sanskrit. And so my relationship with literature began quite early. And then when I was with Prabhupada, all those weeks in Mayapur and Vrindavan, morning and night, hearing Prabhupada, I just knew that my relationship would be with sacred literature. I didn't know how. But then, later I couldn't have anticipated all this. So this text that I'm translating now, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, you're going to see is the first time it's ever been translated and interpreted through the Bhakti Vilocana. Excuse me. The eye of Bhakti. That's our job, to see things with the lens of Bhakti. So my suggestion is that we manifest the dance within our hearts. And that is the definition, my definition of true happiness. Our hearts are dancing with Bhakti so much, it overflows with others. Now look at this strange illustration. I superimposed the heart chakra. Everyone know what the chakras are? Okay? So, first there's at the base of the spine, there's the Muladhara chakra. And then the second one, the Swadhisthana chakra. And then up toward the solar plexus is the Manipura chakra. And then the heart, in the middle of all 7 chakras, the heart is the Anahata chakra. And that is the chakra. By the way, each of the chakras have a unique number of petals, lotus petals. And, okay, Jai Shri Shri. So each one of the chakras have a unique number of petals. It so happens that the heart chakra has 12 petals. It just so happens that my composition of the Ras Mandala has 12 sets of dancers. So I superimposed the heart chakra over the Ras Mandala to illustrate further how this dance is to take place within our hearts. This is likely to be the cover of the Yoga Sutra I'm producing for Yale University Press. The worldly conditioning of the heart. We learned this from the Sarva-līlā. Let's review. The world most fundamentally suffers from an impoverishment of the heart, and yet the universe, in the end, is a most loving place. In the drama presented herein, the human condition is symbolized by the female protagonists, the cowherd maidens, the Vraja Gopikas, or simply gopis, who find themselves in their homes performing their motherly and wifely duties. Indeed, their hearts were in many ways lovingly absorbed in domestic activities, but the eternally perfect fulfillment of the whole heart had yet to be achieved. An awakening and opening of the heart. The divine most ardently sends out a love call for each soul to hear for entering into the ultimate loving state of the divine. This stage is symbolized by the scenes in which the Vrajagopikas are suddenly awakened from their worldly situations by the love call in the form of the flute music coming from Kṛṣṇa. They either ran out to the forest to be with Kṛṣṇa, or they went deep into meditation to be with Kṛṣṇa within their hearts. Either way, the Vrajagopikas open their hearts to Kṛṣṇa, which symbolizes how the heart becomes more and more open to the source of love. This is in the beginning of my Yoga Sutra, by the way. The purification and deepening of the heart. True teachers and sacred writings reveal that all reality, or the divine, lovingly embraces souls. The hearts of the Vraja-gopikas become more and more purified from even the slightest tinges of conditioning as their love for Kṛṣṇa becomes ever more deepened. This stage of symbolizes how the heart becomes completely transparent so that it can reach a perfect and eternal love. And finally, the free-flowing and overflowing of the heart. At this final perfect stage, souls return the embrace of the divine and attain the realm of eternal love. Such liberated souls can now turn to the world to nourish starving hearts. In the climactic scene of this drama, the Vraja-gopikas collectively enter the eternal dance of divine love in which they each have the exclusive attention of Kṛṣṇa, the divinity. This stage symbolizes the heart's capacity to become full, freely overflowing in its abundance of loving energy that draws from and reciprocates with the divine source of all love. And such abundant, pure love also spills over into the hearts of all. So closing up, you remember my birds? I have a special affection for birds. I mean, my name is Garuda. I am a bird. So obviously I'm going to draw from the fowl, F-O-W-L, fowl, analogies. So here is the ahankar. This is me, right here, right? Self-centered, ahankara. We already went over what that is. But we talked about the possibility of paramanyakara, the serving, being centered upon another or the supreme other. Kṛṣṇa has always been embracing us. The question is whether we can return the embrace. I define yoga in my translation of the Bhagavad Gita as the return embrace of the divine embrace that has been eternally holding us, supporting us forever. Remember I talked to you about my kid, right? I gave him a hug and he just stood there like a wet fish, right? That's what we too easily have been. We're not returning the embrace of Kṛṣṇa. When we return the embrace, this is what it looks like. Isn't that adorable? My loving pranams to all of you. Thank you. Okay, we have some time till 12:30, right? Yeah. So, comments, questions? You can yell at me about the high school thing. You know, I can take it, okay? I can take it. Yes. Oh, you got the microphone right there. How convenient. Saved you a little.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I was wondering about the word energy used to describe Radharani. For me, personally, I feel it reminds me of like kinetic energy and like it feels impersonal. So I was wondering why. I saw it in your presentation and often I hear Prabhupada using that word also. So
right.
I just wanted to know about that.
What about power? Same problem? Yeah. Too bad. Okay, next question. Okay. No, think of it this way. The love exchange between Radha and Kṛṣṇa, which you can see so beautifully in this Indian miniature, by the way, it's this tall. I chant my Gayatri mantra in front of it every day. It's an exquisite painting. When I was traveling in India on a Smithsonian grant in 1982, one of the things I would do on the side is I wanted to find the most beautiful picture of Radha and Kṛṣṇa painted, a miniature. And in India, they have thousands of these miniatures in these stores. Thousands. But most of the time, Kṛṣṇa looks like a hot dog vendor. I mean, the nose is just like, do you know what I mean? Have you seen these? The nose is just popping. I was like, what? This is not Kṛṣṇa, you know? And so I just, would go through them in the hundreds, And right before I was to return home after being a year in India, of all places, in Connaught Place, in Delhi, I found this beautiful depiction of Radha and Kṛṣṇa. It is so exquisite. The detail is, and it's this big. So I'm pretending like, I'm just like, going through them. I bought 2 others just to make it look like I wasn't too impressed. I would have paid anything for this. They didn't know what they had. And I took it to Bhaktisiddhanta, our artist in Vrindavan at the time. I think he's in Mayapur now, but he was in Vrindavan for the longest time. And he said it's one of the finest he's ever seen. And he should know. Anyway, it's beautiful. Okay. So back to your question. Yes. So the love shared between Radha and Kṛṣṇa, that's an energy. It's also invisible. And it's another way of sort of connotatively referring to energy, because energy is invisible, right? So in the 7th line of Gayatri mantra, the Kama Gayatri, there's the Ananga. Ananga means without limbs or formless. That's a word for love. Love is formless. The lover and the beloved have forms, but the love is formless. It's an energy. It's an energy that subsumes Radha and Kṛṣṇa. But it's an energy that becomes the embodiment of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So energies can also be embodied. So Radha is the embodiment of divine love. She is the supreme embodiment of divine love. And Kṛṣṇa is enthralled by that. And look, Kṛṣṇa even turns green, right? So I say maybe that helps. And if it doesn't, just, get over it. I mean, I'm trying to be kind. If my wife were here, she'd come right up and kick me. So there are ways of thinking. Read chapter 4 of the Adi-līlā, where Krishnadas Kaviraj is speaking about Radha. I mean, it's energy, it's embodiment, it will come together, I think, for you. That's my medication for you. Oh, is that right? Okay. Oh, why would I trust him? Oh, you know her. Okay, then, okay, yeah, and I don't, so you have it over me, that's fine. Okay. So you're telling me that question was completely unnecessary, is that? No, it was necessary. Good. Thank you, Swamiji. That's very good. That's really kind, yeah. Good. Okay, great. I feel kind of successful now. Yeah. Any other comments? Okay. Yes, right there.
Haribo, thank you so much. What an inspiring and enlivening presentation. Thank you. And I'm sorry I have to bring it all the way down with a really boring kind of silly question, but
oh God. Okay. Yeah, I'm holding on.
I was always I always thought that the gopis' husbands didn't know that they were attracted to Kṛṣṇa, and that they disappeared at night when everybody was sleeping. But in your presentation yesterday, you were saying how they left the cooking, they left the husband, and then later you were saying how the boys and the sons and the fathers and the husbands
tried to detain them.
Yeah. So
that wasn't me saying that. It was the text. Okay. The actual Bhagavata text is saying this. So
they knew that
yes,
their wives were disappearing.
But then again, they didn't, because Yogamaya supplied a supplement form. They appeared to be at home still, so the husbands could be, peaceful. So the gopis have, I explained all this in the book. They have three bodies. They have the body, the domestic body. They then run out to the forest and effectively die, but they don't really die in the normal sense of death. So, because this is Līlā, of course. And then, of course, then there's a sort of duplicate gopi at home. So the husbands can feel all right. But Kṛṣṇa explains to the gopis that I'm your real husband. These husbands are false, right? Ladies, you're married? You know what I'm talking about, right? You know what Kṛṣṇa's talking about. These are just false husbands. Kṛṣṇa's my real husband. Sorry, guys. I'm there with you, okay? But kidding aside, the Līlā really is a bit complex. Swamiji's bringing out beautifully how complex and nuanced these Līlās can be. So, in the commentaries, the acharyas have all kinds of things to say about these different bodies and so on. So, but we have to be careful in the West, we want to know everything. I want to know exactly this, and I want to know exactly that. No. One of the 9 pramanas, usually we only know 3, because Prabhupada presents pratyaksha pramana. Pramana meaning cognition, mode of cognition. This is epistemology, how we know what we know, right? Pratyaksha pramana, empirical. Anumana pramana, inferential or deductive. And then Shabda pramana, which is, of course, revelation, scripture, testimony, and so on. But there's one called abhava pratyaksha pramana. In other words, seeing what you don't know. It's all right to see gaps in one's knowledge. In the West, we just hate that. We have to know. We're such greedy knowing people in the West. We have to know. We have to figure it out. And I see devotees sometimes doing this, even with, difficult issues that are, devotees can get conspiratorial. And what is a conspiracy? Conspiracy is about taking certain facts, but desperately needing to fill in the rest when you cannot fill in the rest. This is where humility is really good to kick in. I just don't know. And that's okay. And when it comes to Līlā, the aprakrita Līlās, the unmanifest Līlās, there are far more of those than the manifest Līlās. There's so much to these Līlās. But I like so much what Swamiji's doing this weekend by showing all of us these different sources for understanding the Līlās. Is he covering it all? No way. Is he covering it more than I could? Yeah, so far, yeah, he has been. I think he's doing a great job. But that's what he's showing us, how nuanced it can get. But you know what? It goes way beyond that. So, what was your question?
Well, there's also something else I wanted
gopis.
to know. Yeah, the gopis. But what about the ones that didn't leave, that they had to join Kṛṣṇa in their hearts then? If they had duplicates, why couldn't they?
Well, okay, so the ones that couldn't leave, for whatever reason, they did leave. They just went through this exit instead of that exit. This is the doorway of the heart or the door of the house. What's the difference? And then even when those who left through the doorway of the house, and in the 4th chapter, one of them, as I pointed out, embraced Kṛṣṇa within. They didn't want to be with Kṛṣṇa on the outside. They wanted to be with Kṛṣṇa within. So even they went and embraced Kṛṣṇa within. So you see, it's a very personal thing, how we return the embrace of Kṛṣṇa. Each of us will find very individual ways of how to return Krishna's embrace of us. You know, one of the ways I like to sort of shock students in the university, because, you know, they're kind of dull, right? Not only are they dull, I actually went to the president of the university and I said, look, is there any way we can, increase the age for admissions here? Because I teach a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds and their brains are not fully formed. The prefrontal cortex is not in. Why do you think a 20-year-old can't rent a car? Because no car rental agency is insane enough to give a $30,000 car to a 20-year-old because they don't have a prefrontal cortex. So I tell all my students that they're half-brained. And that is sheerly out of my grace that I'm willing to teach them. You are half-brained. You don't know what you're doing. I've petitioned the university for a 25-year age admissions. He actually thought it was a good idea, but I don't think he's going to institute it. I tell my students, do you know that you are sitting? I said, life is a miracle. You are each sitting in a body of 37 trillion cells. They're all kind of sitting there. I said, but let's not stop there. Each cell has at least 1 million working parts. Any of you smoke cigarettes? So you want to destroy that very complex, amazing machine? So I yell at them and so on. I still get high ratings for some reason when I teach. I don't know why. Because I am absolutely demeaning and terrifying to my students. And condescending as all get out. Really, abusive. The miracle of just existence. Like, Swamiji, you were talking this morning about numbers, right? How many cows? We can't even comprehend. Look, forget the divine realm for a moment. Right here, 37 trillion cells. Each cell with 1 million working parts. And a heart that's supposed to pump blood, the biological heart, supposed to pump and nourish every single one of those cells. Look, yeah, chance. That's exactly. Yeah. If anyone says that, they get an F. I don't let anyone get away with that kind of thing, But that's the idea, that, right? Right? Random, right? Life itself, even here, is extraordinary. What to speak of the divine Līlās, as you were speaking earlier this morning. Amazing. So we have a lot to learn from these Līlās, but we can't know everything. Someone else, we have a few minutes left. We've got up here, we've got over there. I don't know what you want to do. You want to split the microphone in half? That's what Solomon did for the baby, Hare
Kṛṣṇa Prabhu, thank you so much for the wonderful classes you gave us. I have 2 questions. You can choose to say that because there are many people.
No, I might not answer either of them.
That's fine too. One was in your penultimate verse when you were sharing, I didn't register the number of the verse, but in that verse, Krishna is referred to as the son of Devaki, and I was wondering if that had any sort of significance, especially considering that this is all happening in Vrindavan and
right.
He has not yet, and how he's being referred to as son of Devaki instead of Yashoda, if that had a significance. That was my first question. And the second one was, you were talking about sharing, and I was wondering how we can share without having this feeling that I have got the solution or that what I have is in some way better than what you already know or have. How do I share without getting into that feeling? And also, kind of the pride that you were talking about yesterday, when we are sharing from that place. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question. I believe there are comments by the acharyas. I've sort of settled on my own understanding as when we talk about Devaki, the son of Devaki, we're talking about a little bit more of an Aishwarya manifestation of divinity, of Kṛṣṇa. And the contrast of Aishwarya and this level of Madhurya that just becomes transformed. I mean, the contrast is very dramatic. And I think something of that. Now, that's my own interpretation. So I think it was there for like dramatic contrast. Like, look, the son of Devaki is melting into a green emerald. I mean, look at that. How is that possible? Okay, so, but there are some other, there's so much to it. Could be right there in the book. The second question about how to share. Sharing doesn't, the prerequisite of sharing isn't necessarily having the answers. Sharing might be, well, I remember in the early days, remember Sunday feasts back in the early days? They were really something. They were different back then. In the 60s, the 70s. I sat down with someone at the Sunday feast. I said, good to meet you. Is this your first time here? He said, yeah. I said, my name is Garuda dāsa. Who are you? He said, I'm God. Back then, this is not that abnormal. Okay, I said, excuse me, you're God? He said, yes. I said, I have been looking for you for a long time. I am so glad I met you. And I gave him a hug. Well, it's about time you came to your temple. So sharing may be of a psychotic nature or a neurotic nature. A sharing could be, I just don't know. I just don't know if there's a God. I just don't know how to believe in a God. Do you believe in a God? And you might say, no, I don't believe in a God either. I experience God all the time. What is the need for belief? You're experiencing God all the time, everywhere. And you share that with them. Or if you don't, you can say, well, my spiritual master, he or she, sees God everywhere. And I'm just in awe of them. Wow. A bad way to greet someone and share, which is not really sharing, let's say he didn't say God, but let's say he reversed it, said, my name is dog, whatever. And I say, well, Prabhupada is a pure devotee. You should surrender to him, like the rest of us here. That's sharing. No one likes to be told what to do. Rather, sharing would be, I have found in Prabhupada's teachings the most amazing visions for life. So much so, I've devoted my whole life to his teachings. I'd love to share some of them with you. Wow. That's powerful, right? You can't, when you say Prabhupada is a pure devotee, you can start debating that. You can question that. What do you mean your Prabhupada is a pure? What do you mean by that? It was perfect. He's infallible. If you say stuff like, what? Come on now. No. But if you say, I found in Prabhupada's teachings such compelling visions that I have devoted my whole life to his vision, that is absolutely true, and no one can take that away from you, and no one can debate it. It's powerful. That's sharing. feelings are absolutely true. I love the music of what's popular these days? I don't know. Gaga. This lady she's called Gaga Lady. Okay. What is it? Lady Gaga, Gaga Lady, who cares? I mean, do you care? I don't care. Okay, fine. So can we move on here? God, you didn't tell me this audience would be so picky. I mean, if that were true, and I truly loved that music, you can't go along and say, no, you don't love that music. I mean, I love some Renaissance Christian choral music. I think it's beautiful, Aishwarya music. I mean, but you can't tell me that I don't love it. It's beautiful. What's happening here? What happened? Is there something crawling around in the room? Oh, Swamiji left. Oh. So that's what sharing is about. Yes. Oh, so I've got this. Great, yeah. Technically, we're supposed to end. Do you want to keep going for a few more minutes, or? Okay, whatever. Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Garuda Prabhu.
Well, just wait 1 second here. Just Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar. Okay.
It's always, for me, it's always a great pleasure having the opportunity to attend your lectures in a personal way. I think you perhaps is one like the first few Hare Krishna lecture I heard, perhaps one of them is from you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I really am. They should wait a while to hear me.
It's perhaps 2016 or 2017, but I don't remember the exact time. You were talking about Mahaprabhu, the Mahabhava that is exhibited exclusively by Mahaprabhu and no one else. And you compared Mahaprabhu to a geyser.
Right.
And I remembered a phrase you quoted in that lecture. It's Shri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi
Anya.
Anya.
That's right.
I was very new during that time. I don't have any profound understanding of what is Vedic literature or the Indian culture, but that phrase just sounds so beautiful, and I caught it and tried to catch it. And
you said it beautifully, so you are successful.
Thank you. And I think just on this line of thought of sharing, maybe I can share two things with you. The first is I feel like this point you raised today, the exclusivity versus the inclusivity, corresponds very well to the point you raised yesterday, which is egocentric versus theocentric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like the pride that gopis displayed initially is kind of a doorway or a stimulus to the later section of the reunion, because the feeling of distance and separation, it heightens the rasa later on in the Rāsa dance.
That's right.
And I feel that's very beautiful. And another sharing is the the new picture you created for your Patanjali Yoga Sutra book that
The heart chakra?
the Radha and Kṛṣṇa,
Oh,
and then surrounded by 12 pairs of Kṛṣṇa and Gopika.
yes.
And I mean, if possible, maybe you can consider adding another important creature in the scene, which is the bees.
The bees.
The bees.
A painting of the bees.
The bees.
Just the bees.
No. I'm sorry. The bees be depicted in that particular scene, because bee, according to the description of the verses, is also described as part of the Rasa dance.
Yes. But I'm not sure I'm understanding. The bees. Oh, let me. So you didn't know where the bees were.
Oh, I
okay.
didn't see it.
You didn't see the bees. I'm going to show you the bees. Yeah, you like the bees, so I'm going to show you the bees. Who said that? Okay, let me see if this can. Be seen. Okay, here we go. Let me see. Oh no! See, I tried to expand it on my screen, but it doesn't. Okay, let me try that again. Basically, what I can do here. There. I have to prove it to you. I'm very intent on proving it to you. So let me see if I can do that now. Well, I will show you privately the bees here. I can show it here. It's too hard for me to get up there.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We have time for a few more. There and then there. I mean, I'll go as long as you folks want to go, but I mean, you're going to get tired of me very quickly.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I'm in the back here. Thank you. Hari Bol.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for the very enlivening and informative and funny presentation.
Funny.
I had a
In the sense of peculiar.
going back to your initial college days,
Yes.
where you were asked, what is the pinnacle of your tradition?
Oh, that's the graduate, doctoral studies.
And
right.
I haven't gotten to read your book yet. I'm very eager to, but I wanted to just explore that a little more. It may be difficult in a short time, but how did you decide on that as opposed to perhaps so many pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or the Ratha Yatra? How does that still shine forward to you because as Gaudiyas, we have so much emphasis on Mahaprabhu.
Yeah, that's right.
I was just curious, Rasa-līlā, should I just read your book?
Well, I never tell anyone that they should read my book. But let me just respond by saying that all those Chaitanya Līlās point to the Rasa-līlā. Or I should say, so many of them. The whole point of the Ratha Yatra is to bring Kṛṣṇa, back to Vrindavan. Why? Well, that's where he dances with the Vrajagopikas. He's and he most delighted when Swarup Damodar would read passages from the Rasa-līlā. Also, the king Prataparudra, right? He snuck in, finally, got audience of Mahaprabhu, and he got a favorable audience, not just because he dressed in ordinary clothes, but he was reading from the Rasa Panchadhyayi. So I reviewed all of that quickly in my head. Everything seemed to point to it. And then, of course, I remembered Vishwanatha Chakravarti, the greatest Līlā of all. I mean, what do you do with those words? You take them seriously and you say to your doctoral advisor, this is our ultimate symbol. I even claim in the book that as Christians worship the crucifixion, as the Ark of the Covenant is worshipped by Jews, as Mecca is worshipped by Muslims. We Vaishnavas worship Radha Krishna or the Rasa Mandala, the Rasa dance. Radha Krishna is but a collapsed version of the Rasa Mandala. The Rasa Mandala is Radha Krishna, remember? Because each of those Rajagopikas are the embodiments of Radha's emotions. So put all those Rajagopikas together, you've got Radha. Put all those Krishnas back together, you've got Krishna. You have Radha and Krishna. Radha Krishna with the Rasa Mandala, same. But one is the outward gaze of divinity, and one is the inward gaze of divinity. So that's how I chose it. I mean, I was under a lot of pressure there, sitting in his office, right? But that's what I came up with, and I've never seen it proven to be incorrect. So there you have it. Oh, yes.
Thank you so much for accepting Maharaj's invitation, Prabhu, to speak to us. This has been an absolute feast for the heart.
Oh, good.
So very grateful.
Good.
My request is
Even the high school thing and stuff like that.
my request is totally unrelated to the class and what you've been
Oh,
talking
good.
about.
I could use a break, yeah.
In preparing us to hear from you, Maharaj has been telling us about a conversation that he had with you where you told him about 7 or 9 different interpretations of the Indian head nod. And he said you had him laughing. Do you remember what he's referring to? The Indian head nod can refer to like so many different...
Yes.
Would
Yes.
you be willing to share that with us?
Yeah, I actually bring this up at the university. I say in the West, we're very binary, black and white, black and white. And once, when I lived in India, I had to learn how to live in India without being an American, which, by the way, is a lot of devotees go there as Americans and they stay Americans. But really, to live in India, it's a whole different way of doing things. But, I went up to a restaurant. I said, "Bhai Sahab," you have to talk with an Indian accent in English, but it has to be with the accent. Otherwise, they don't understand, right? So I said, "Bhai Sahab, is this restaurant veg or non-veg?" He go, "Acha." Right? Did I do the head wobble right? Yeah, I did. Okay. So what I say to my students is that in India, they have a different worldview. It's not black and white. It's, yes, it's no, maybe, maybe not, all of the above, none of the above, and forget about it all. And that's what the head wobble is. So the idea, is that we see things from different angles. So, I had the nerve to go to Satchidananda Ashram, where in Yogaville, where Swami Satchidananda, who, by the way, met Prabhupada in the hospital once, he appreciated it. I went there to talk about the Yoga Sutra and how it's ultimately a bhakti text. And I've been going there often, on and off for years, and I even have a disciple who's living there now and chanting the Maha Mantra all the time. They love it. She chants beautifully and so on. So I went there and I was giving them some of my recently translated aphorisms from the Yoga Sutra. And one of the sannyasinis raised her hand and she said, "I actually really love that translation of this particular sutra text better than my Gurudev's. I'm feeling guilty to say, but let me ask you, is he right and you're wrong? Or are you, right and he's wrong?" I said, "Neither." And then I did my I didn't actually do it, but I said, "Look, he is right from the angle at which he's approaching the Yoga Sutra. I'm right in the angle in which I'm approaching the Yoga Sutra. So it's not black and white. It's not that he's wrong and I'm right. No. If you like what I've written or translated more, it's possible because you like the different kinds of sources I'm engaging over those of the ones that Swamiji is using. So you may want to follow that. Look into it, So it's not this black and white situation, We're so that way in the West. Very binary, black, white, yes, no, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's my head wobble. Swamiji told you about this? I'm not going to share anything personal with him again. Yeah, you have to, if you have a comment or question, you got to convince the man with the microphone. I have no power here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
You talked about the gopis locking hands, which
Linking arms.
linking arms, which meant like inclusivity. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also introduced the Harinam Sankirtan,
Yes.
which also means like inclusive, should be inclusive.
Yes.
Are they connected? Like, is it the same as sharing that you are talking
Oh,
about?
yes. That's nice. Nice point. Really nice point. Could be expanded on for several more hours. Don't worry. But it's not just kirtan. It's sankirtan. That means we do it all together. So it's very much an inclusive act. So that upasarga, that prefix is so powerful in the word sankirtanam. So his external purpose, as we know from the 4th chapter of Adi-līlā, was to establish the Sankirtan movement. But it's not unrelated to his internal mood, which was to understand the love of Krishna and Radha and their love together. Because Sankirtan is a celebration of their love. And together, like the Vrajagopikas, together we celebrate Radha and Krishna. So I thank you for bringing that up. It's very important. It's good.
Thank you.
I had the same, from that same passage that you mentioned, there was this very powerful expression that you say that locking of arms means the inclusivity in humanity.
Yes.
And divinity doesn't descend unless that is in place.
Yes.
So when we have situations, you extended it to how religions tend to have that exclusive. They have it the other way.
Yes.
So
that was my claim.
From the perspective of we that are receiving these most incredible opportunities to enter into these, understandings, we see that there is not necessarily sometimes there is divisions within our ISKCON society.
Yes.
Is that can be equated that, the divinity, when that's present, when there is divisions, can we assume that divinity is not necessarily fully present, or how does it work in one sense? Because we're representing this highest.
Yes.
And then we still, Prabhupada tells, we have to cooperate with each other, we have to figure it out how to have diversity and unity, etc., etc.
Right.
How do you, and you have to deal with the intelligentsia of ISKCON. You have to deal with all these things. Sometimes in the levels of GBCs we have divisions.
Yes.
And sometimes very, very, conflicting divisions.
So how does this apply to ISKCON is what you're asking?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So Prabhupada wanted us to cooperate together. Cooperate doesn't mean you have to do exactly what I do. That's the way some people interpret cooperate. Like, we need to cooperate, so you should just simply do what I do. This is what I've been told. No, cooperate means I'm operating and you're operating and we're doing it together. And it may not be exactly the same, but in the meantime, we dialogue. It always comes back to sharing. I wanted to talk to someone, one of my godbrothers leading the movement, and I guess he heard some things about me, and he just put his hands up and walked by. He would not even give me a chance to even introduce myself. He has some fears. Now, all of you who've gotten to know me, you can understand why someone would do that. I understand why someone would do that. Okay? So, but seriously, it's when there's no dialogue, there's no relationship. When there's no relationship, there's no cooperating. When there's no cooperating, there's no unity. When there's no unity, things fall apart. And, you know, it's sad to me to see an institution that can't facilitate more dialogue and to fall behind in the way that dialogue takes place these days, which is on the internet, whether you like it or not. And to be able to really communicate with people is so important. And leadership today means to lead people wherever they need to be led and from where they need to be led. So that's dynamic leadership, communication. So it's tricky. It is very tricky. Now, for example, there's one passage that's been very, very troublesome to even devotees. The Prabhupada writes, it's the famous passage on rape, right? Many of you know of it. And I've seen and witnessed for years devotees trying to stretch Govinda, stretch the meaning that Prabhupada meant, to rationalize it away, to say this. And I mean, from the BBT's official statements to Anuttama's, statements of the communications ministry. And I've just seen that it's just so unfortunate that we don't know how to bring together the best of our facilities to bear upon a particular issue. So I decided to, solve this problem, how to understand this statement. So I reviewed, the first part of the paper is reviewing all of the pathetic attempts to interpret this statement. And then the second part was to apply Mimamsa hermeneutics, the principles that the Goswamis themselves used in performing and giving careful exegetical commentaries to the Shastra. I applied these to an analysis of what Prabhupada means. No one has ever come up with this. No one has ever defeated what I've done, and it was published in ISKCON Communications Journal. We need more of us to solve these issues that are contentious and painful in many ways. Devotees have been very much pained by that statement in Prabhupada's books at times. Some just choose to ignore it. The negative statements about women throughout the books. I've been addressing that. But then, I'm obnoxious enough to put forward some solutions that are a bit unusual. For example, you'll find Prabhupada saying that women are less intelligent than men. And I'll say yes. Women, now that's a generalization. Women tend to be less intelligent than men in the ways that men tend to be intelligent. But the converse is also true. Men are less intelligent than women in the ways that women tend to be more intelligent than men. But you don't see that anywhere except from obnoxious Garuda dāsa. And I support it. For example, right in the Gita, the 7 qualities of the feminine, one of them is intelligence. But it's not the word buddhi, it's the word medha. So I talked to Vishaka about this, my dear god sister Vishaka. She was so excited about this, she wrote it in her book. It doesn't mention me, but that's fine. I mean, I don't have any pride. Look, let's keep everything I've said, in Gita here. It doesn't go out any. Oh my goodness, what is that? Is this live? Then I'm dead. But dialogue is everything. When it's not there, nothing, only nothing can happen. Or even bad things. The difficult issues. ISKCON's been weak in ethics, areas of ethics. When I gave a talk at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, where sometimes we will all go, my devotional students and I will do a retreat there. I'm very fond of the manor. I've been there since, I've seen there that temple since 1974, just after it was acquired. So I have a lot of affection for the place. And so I was giving a class one morning about how, while I've been in England, I promise you all that I have not gone to any brothels or any horse races or any meat restaurants, or I haven't taken any intoxications. The whole time I've been here, all 5 days, I've been very good. I'm not going to say before the 5 days, but while I've been in England, I've been really like Pukka, 4 regular principles, right? I said, but I met someone downtown London who was talking to me apparently in English with such thick Cockney accent, I could not understand a word he said. I got so impatient, so I killed him. And everyone in the room was shocked. I said, I'm still following the 4 regular principles. It doesn't say I can't kill someone. So you're looking at me like I broke the regular. No, I did not go to brothels. I did not go to meat restaurants. I did not take intoxication. Did not, whatever. But I killed this man because the way he was butchering the English language, I can't stand it. Anyway, so we were talking about ethics, and of course, at the end of the class, there was a little Indian boy sitting in front of me, and he had a question, and he said, "Did you really kill that man?" I never really answered him, but the point is that we are weak in the areas of ethics, and but built into bhakti is an ethical system. The very fact that if we can share, you know what I asked my devotional students to do? I said something much harder than any of the 4 regular principles. To be extremely sensitive, increasingly so, to the thoughts and feelings of other persons. Can you do that? And can you respond in kind? If you can do that, 4 regular principles are already taken care of. To be sensitive to the thoughts and feelings of another person. This has to do with the anyakara that I've been talking about, right? Centered upon the other. And forget about the golden principle. Yeah, the golden principle is important at a primitive level, but I like the platinum principle, which is the bhakti principle, which is do unto others as Kṛṣṇa shows you what they need. Do unto others what Kṛṣṇa shows you should do. Not a projection. Do unto you what I would have you do unto me. I should not have anything to do with this equation. Real service is to be fully giving to the other, to be centered upon the other, to be sensitive to the thoughts and feelings of others. This is the hardest thing. very hard. We speak too soon before we really know how to speak and how to respond. So this is, look what Kṛṣṇa did with Arjuna. He said hardly 5 words when he's speaking 28 verses. It's because Kṛṣṇa is the supreme listener. Now, we may not be supreme listeners, but we can be good human listeners. Keep listening. Ask questions, probing, until something clicks where you know how to respond. That's a real friend. That's a real bhakta sharing. These are the things we have to focus on. Oh my goodness. We also need to focus on nourishing the body. It's called lunch prasad. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you. I hope to come back soon.